Welcome to Get Moving TV. I'm Dr. Chris Landon and I serve as your host. Ventura County is, of course, an amazing place, but occasionally we reach out to other people who become involved with us. I've had the advantage of having lunch at Coin and Candor with Thorin, who has a new initiative coming out in association with our local Four Seasons in Westlake. And he said, oh, and by the way, I have someone who likes to sing punk songs, and well, I'd like to introduce you. So we met by Zoom, and joining me today is Dr. Galen Buckwalter.
Pleasure, Chris.
Yes, punk artist, but also, I think, research scientist for Brain.one.
Correct. Yeah.
So, Thorin, of course, was explaining about your background, and so as a research scientist, how did you start out in research science?
I think I always have been interested in life's patterns. Growing up on a farm, you see the cycles of life, and it always fascinated me. And I went through some events, as you can tell, that were a bit outside the norm. I always actually thought I was going to be a farmer myself, but that kind of got taken off the list of possibilities by a spinal cord injury. But long story, going to eventually ending up in grad school and finding statistics and numbers and probability and patterns and the power of being able to analyze data for patterns. Just finally felt like I found my soil. So yeah, I've been a research nerd ever since.
So you moved from your Mennonite farmer background and studying farm animals to studying these two bipedal animals and finding probably the behavior is not that different. My dad was very interested in the behavior of gorillas, and and so then he'd apply that to what happened in the office, and he'd see the same kind of things occurring.
I mean, we at our core were creatures that were self-organizing biological creatures, and the core of our circadian rhythms and our hormonal cycles drive every biological organism to some extent. So looking for those commonalities is fascinating.
Well, but I'm interested in lots of things, and the producer of the show, some 20 years ago said, use your powers for good, not evil. So as we watch the Marvel universe there, so how are you using your powers for good?
I think good ultimately is what drives our evolution as humans. I think there is a arc of justice that our brains even are advanced by things like compassion and gratitude, that by engaging in a pro-social universe, we're actually, I think that's the cutting edge of our evolution. That's what distinguishes us from the gorillas and our close primate relatives is our truly compassionate nature. And so I think the more we can do to make that possible for people to experience, that's what I see as my work. It's very much a part of what Thorin's doing with Brain.one. So yeah, I think that's where I'm trying to, as a research scientist, do good.
Well, it's at South by Southwest. I hope this year you'll be able to join us out there, or Thorne will.
That would be nice.
And I met the inventor of reCAPTCHA, that stupid thing to try and get in. And he just said, look, if you do it 4 or 5 times, it doesn't care whether you know the motorcycle from the bus. Really, just it's just make sure you're human. And he had married the woman who went to Congress for talked about Facebook and how much they manipulate you. And so there's the two of them together. We're sitting on a couch, and it was quite the experience, because she's trying to become famous, of course, for doing that, for whatever emotional reason she has. So there's our evil sits there. Some 20 years ago, I went back to the NIH for the Iraqi war dividend because people had arms blown off and the like, and so actually here we can 3D print an arm and make it so you can throw a baseball or ride a bicycle and the like. So how are you using your knowledge for good there? So what is Brain.one, or have you done something similar? I mean, in society, we're so separated now, and we watch in Japan, people aren't dating, they're all leading separate lives. What kind of work have you done to bring people together with your technology and knowledge?
Well, I did do the research and wrote the original algorithm for eHarmony.com, which was, I think, the first true effort to use what we call psychometrics, or the ability to quantify latent traits of humans. So our personality, our values, our interests, and we developed a questionnaire that all the people took, and we validated that questionnaire on married couples who also took a marital satisfaction survey. So we built our algorithm based on couples that were most satisfied in marriage. Then when we, singles would come in, we would match them with people that best fit that profile of a long-term satisfied marriage. So that was one tangible effort that I was involved in. I feel quite proud of the work that we did there. There was one large-scale study of outcomes, which at the 7-year mark found that the divorce rate amongst eHarmony couples was about 4%. Among match, it was closer to 8%, but in the wild, as we like to say, it was closer to 11% that don't mix. I felt very good about that.
Was this part of your PhD? So prior, your PhD research was trying to figure out women, which would be, that's anybody's thesis. I think all of us are still trying to figure that out. How did you develop your questionnaires?
Right out of my PhD, I was a research professor at USC, and there I worked in Alzheimer's disease primarily. And that's kind of where I developed some research targeting women, because we actually found cognitive differences between men and women that were surprising, in that among people with dementia, women did worse on verbal skills, whereas in the normal population, women do much better than we do at things like verbal fluency and tasks like recalling names. So that was intriguing, and we ended up, estrogen seems to be a factor in that verbal fluency. So long story short, we ended up looking at whether women with Alzheimer's disease might be less prone to take estrogen replacement therapy. And sure enough, we found a difference. That caught a lot of interest. It ended up NIH funded an arm of the Women's Health Initiative to look at that and found no effect.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's fine.
that's science.
Yes.
Exactly what you said. It was a theory that we found some evidence for. Interestingly, it still continues to be debated in a lot of quarters because estrogen is so clearly has such positive effects on brain development and neuronal growth, even in adults. So it's not entirely a settled question, but it was
Yes.
part of science. But I ended up getting very interested in estrogen and started thinking of other ways that we could look at the effects of estrogen. So we did the first fairly large study looking at pregnancy and cognition. And initially I went into that study thinking, these women are just loaded with estrogen. It goes up, like exponential levels during pregnancy. But again, this is why you do the research. We found out, what women have been saying forever, that there's a little bit of fogginess during pregnancy. What's come to be called mommy brain. And so we identified that, and we reported that, and it sounds like, we weren't saying, women lose. I mean, it comes back in spades, but it was, we got a lot of calls from women saying, thanks, I didn't know if I was going crazy because I put my car keys in the fridge and,
Yes.
and the orange juice on beside the door.
My nurse at work is pregnant, and it was 9 o'clock at night, and she asked for her husband to make her some more, and he goes, "It's 9 o'clock at night, honey," and she started to cry and couldn't stop. I go, okay, we'll talk to Galen about that.
Yeah.
But now we're going to use our forces for good here. So tell me about Brain.one, and then we'll talk about your skull cap there.
Yeah, Brain.one, the brainchild of Thorne Stevens, is attempting to use the power of micro habits for positive human wellness, health, and brain health. There are so many things that we know we can do that are going to make our lives better. We know if we exercise. We know if we, don't, that we eat the right things. It's all been demonstrated. But actually doing these things is a much different story. And what the thesis of Brain.one is that it micro habits, just doing good things, limited amounts. You don't need to be exercising, in the gym for an hour to get the benefits of exercise. You can spread it out throughout the day. There may be other things that you can be doing. So it it uses AI to evaluate the scientific literature around these relationships, then looks for the profile, the protocol that's going to be best for each person that signs up, and then works with that person to implement this this protocol of, positive, beneficial behaviors, ways of thinking, ways of eating, kind of complete lifestyle changes that you can make, in small doses to end up getting the benefit of these really powerful ways of regulating our system.
Well, I think sitting down with Thorin, so many of my bros there, oh, I need some metformin, Dr. Landon. Oh,
Yeah.
I've got a cold plunge pool now. Oh, this plastic surgeon I walk with on Sundays must be taking 50 vitamins a day and just drinks muscle milk. I go, Chip, have you heard of food and the like? And he strangles his muscles with blood pressure cuff and works all these things. So really, I look forward to the information that comes out. And if we can get people off of TikTok, that would be nice too. And get kids away and get them actually incorporating into their lives.
Yeah, nature's a good thing, huh?
Yeah, works out pretty nicely there. But let's talk a little bit about the top of your head there, since you've been dealing inside your head for the last 20 minutes or so. So tell me about your journey with Caltech and USC Neuroscience, and then we'll talk about Ziggy's there.
Yeah, okay. Well, my path to deciding to get brain implants, which is what these represent, as we've referred to, I have a spinal cord injury from, I did that at 17.
How did you do that, by the way?
The old-fashioned way, diving into a rock,
Well, because I've worked a lot with people, and they're all, oh, they're so nice. No, they were in a van going 100 miles an hour and flipped the car. They were jumping all into a rock. So your body suddenly is not matching up with your brain and what it wants to do.
Not at all. I mean, the analogy I give, when I dove in and hit that rock, I stayed conscious. But it literally felt like I got stabbed in my neck and my body was cut off. And more or less, that's kind of what I live with. It's the body I have to relate to in a very different way.
Were there people with you when this happened?
Fortunately, yeah.
I have a friend, the same thing happened with Ocean. Carpinteria, World's Safest Beach, Rogue Wave, and he felt angels pushing him up from the bottom. Did you have any kind of experience like that?
I did have.
You need to be here. So.
Have the preparation for death. I mean, because initially, when that happened, it was like, oh my God, this is terrible. But I mean, it was in a matter of seconds. It was like, I'm dying, and it was a very positive thing. It was the most serene feeling I've ever had. So, yeah, death is not the enemy. I don't think so. So yeah, I've been in a chair now for over 50 years, and I mean, it's hard. It's a hard way to live. It gets the challenges get more profound in a certain sense as with age. Like now I have issues with blood pressure management and my autonomic nervous system. My core structure of my bones has really deteriorated. So that causes a lot of pain that I don't actually feel, but my body, it causes the autonomic response anyway. So, I mean, a couple of years ago, it was like, I went through this really crisis kind of do I really want to put up with this crap? It was around that time that I heard about this trial of spinal cord injured patients were qualify, and the goal of the Caltech USC collaboration is basically to hack the spinal cord. So to do that, they put in what are called arrays. Each array is really small. It's 4 by 4 millimeter little chip, basically, that has 64 electrodes in it. And they insert they take off the skull, do a full craniotomy, and put in 6 of these across my right or my left hemisphere for my right side. And these are focused around the sensory motor cortex. So I'm able now to just use my thinking, and like in a VR or something, I can move a virtual hand and move the fingers, which I can't do. But the brain, amazingly, has retained those those neurons, and they were able to put these devices right into those areas. They had done a lot of fMRIs first, but yeah, their goal is to learn how the brain generates signals for movement and for sensation, and be able to then direct those signals around the break in the spinal cord and go back into the spinal cord, so that it's basically an effort to hack the spinal cord. So being involved in this, there's nothing like having a sense of purpose, sense of meaning, and the issues that I haven't gone away, but it has given me kind of the grit you need to get up and slug it out, and yeah.
It's fascinating because way back when I was doing psychobiology, I worked with Eva Fifkova, who is at Caltech, and we would take the eyes out of rats and watch the cortex shrink.
Yeah.
So the fact that you retain so much motor, that you're able to find it.
Yeah.
And we had a
they were amazed to find
that
they were there. Yeah.
We had probably 10 years ago, someone from Japan, and we have you get into a robot basically, and so you're able to stand and look over somebody instead. They had an unusual marketing plan, was somewhere out of the Terminator, I think. But so is that what you're looking for in the future, a standing wheelchair? Or?
No, this is not something that is going to benefit me. They're very clear to put that out. This is for the young, dumb kids in the future, basically. And that works for me at this point in my life.
Well, we have just a couple minutes left. Tell me about Siggy's and your other interests there.
Siggy is, one of my creative outlets. I think we all need to, get out in the left hemisphere and, just create and dance and enjoy life. And music has always been part of my life. Started when I came out to LA from, the good old farm, punk rock was just so vitalizing for me. And eventually I started singing, and punk rock, you don't really have to be able to sing to be a singer, so it worked well. And but no, I had a band called Idiots Blocking Traffic, best band name ever, right? For a punk rock group, but that stopped, and I had a student that I was working with, and he wanted some extra help, so I knew he played guitar, and that was 27 years ago, and he and my wife Deborah, and that is our bass player for the last 20 years or so, and we have a drummer, Paul, and yeah, every Friday night, it's Siggy time, and yeah, it's so vitalizing. And a little bonus is I was asked by none other than Thorin to sing on a killer track that he's had around and been working on. So that's something that's going to be dropping soon, shall we say.
All right. Well, Galen, thank you so very much for sharing your life, love, and pursuit of happiness here. Ventura, it's time for you to get moving. Listen to Siggy, brain implants. Do use your forces for good, not evil. It's time for you to get moving.
And whistling just sends off my brain in specific areas that are just kind of mind-blowing. It's only that kind of whistle. If I do that, doesn't do it. If I sing, doesn't do it.